Good evening, America. You are about to meet Sergeant Dave, host of the Remember the Fallen show. After having survived a rollover accident avoiding a landmine in a troop transport vehicle, military acronym LMTV, in the Parwan province of Afghanistan in 2004, he emerges and returns to the United States with an even more compelling tale of perseverance as he navigates the rapids of the troubled VA system. He gains a new perspective with a fever of enthusiasm to all patriots across the windswept fields of America.
Well, tonight's podcast, we will be live at the NeverForgottenMemorials.org studio on the Winter Springs Oviedo line in Seminole County, USA. And tonight's podcast, we're going to stay focused on the Wreaths Across America mission. They've been doing it since 2005, and Mauro Wister just did something incredible. He had a surplus of wreaths, and he sent them down to Arlington Cemetery. He put a whole bunch out there on the cemetery. The following year, he did it again, and it was just a perfect amount of snowfall, about 3 inches of snowfall on the wreaths and on the graves of our heroes of America, and the picture went viral, and the whole nation got a hold of it. And now you have Wreaths Across America at like 1,300 locations, 1.5 million last year. So we're going to go to a little bit about the radio, Wreaths Across America Radio, and we're going to go back and forth with quite a few things to keep you engaged and entertained how important this Wreaths Across America event is. It's usually like the second Saturday in December. Today was a great day. I love this time of year for myself because I help unload the trucks, the wreaths. So I unloaded with Tim, another great driver, on a Tyson sponsor. Tyson sponsored the 18-wheeler, and Tim was out of Arkansas, and me and him met up at Woodlawn, and me and him unloaded 495 wreaths off a 18-wheeler trailer, and then I took another shipment to the VFW. So this is the time of year I just love doing this with the Wreaths Across America, and it couldn't be better because it was just about 40 degrees, just enough cold weather just to get you in the spirit. So here's the radio station. I want to go ahead and put that to you live, and listen up, and we'll go in and out on some great segments of Wreaths Across America. Just hold on.
Mission Matters on Wreaths Across America Radio with Executive Director Karen Worcester. The year-long mission of Wreaths Across America is to remember our fallen servicemen and women, honor those who serve and their families, and teach younger generations the value of freedom. Now here's your host for Mission Matters, Karen Worcester.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Mission Matters. I am so excited as the Executive Director of Wreaths Across America to have an opportunity to talk not just about the laying of the wreaths, but what is behind the mission, remember, honor, and teach. Every year we choose a theme. This year the theme, and some of you already, if you follow Wreaths Across America, know that the theme this year is to be their witness. And today, at our very first show of Mission Matters, I'm really excited to talk to the person that really instilled in me patriotism, and I get emotional just saying that, but also that really started this movement of placing wreaths, using the wreath as a catalyst to teach and to carry out the mission. And today we're talking with my husband and the founder of Wreaths Across America, Mauro Wister. And what I really would like to do is to kind of break down the barrier and have people get to know the Mauro that we know and that we work with as we get the wreaths ready to go every year, and as we go out around the country and have the opportunity to talk and share. So Mauro, I want to ask you first about back in 1992, because I don't want to rehash the whole story, because a lot of people have heard the story of you going to Arlington as a paper boy, and then in 1992, with a surplus of wreaths, you got permission. Because I'm giving them the Reader's Digest version for all you folks out there that haven't heard it. But Mauro, in 1992, you were given permission to take wreaths down to National Cemetery. And when you got there, you were really surprised. You were able to place the wreaths, and it took all day. But what I remember when you came home was you sharing with me about the individuals' names that you read from the gravestones. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that, because our theme is to be their witness. And talk to me about the section of the cemetery that you went to and the era of the burials that were in that section.
First of all, Arlington didn't really know what to think about me and what I was up to on placing wreaths on veteran graves and so on. So they, for want of a better term, they stuck us over in the corner of the cemetery, and it happened to be section 27. And section 27 is a very old section of Civil War soldiers and even some slaves and so on. It's a bunch of different people that are buried there. You got to realize it's the first time anyone has ever done what we did. And we had this whole truckload of wreaths, and we only had a handful of people. But we were just overwhelmed. We went up onto a hill. We had plenty of time to read the names, and one guy started to read the names, and then another one started to read, and then we all started to read the names out loud, and we were having having our own little great time there, I guess. But that's how it all got going. I remember right in the very first hill that we went up, 2/3 of the way up on the hill. I can walk right to that grave right now. But it said John F. Kennedy on the grave. Well, obviously, it wasn't the President of the United States, but the guy's name was John F. Kennedy, and I just will never forget that we stumbled onto that. But there's many things that happened that day. Another thing, we went over to the site, opened the back doors, we started placing the wreaths. Well, Arlington actually had a couple of their people from the administration office. Their job that day was to keep an eye on us. So these two guys with suits on just kept every half hour or 3/4 of an hour, they would come by and just to see what the progress was. And the area got bigger and bigger and bigger that we were placing the wreaths. And one of the trips they made, they asked them to stop their car and got out, and they said, well, who's in charge of this? And they all pointed at me, and these two guys walked up on another hill, and they said, how near do you have the truck unloaded? And I said, well, I think we have it about half unloaded at this point. And you can imagine there must have been 5, 6 acres of land, gravestones, that had a wreath placed on. And one guy looked at me and he said, well, you're only half done. Who's going to clean up these things when you get done? And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, I got to go back to Maine. I really didn't have an answer, and it didn't make me feel very good, but that's just the way it was. So I said, I don't know. The first guy that did the talking looked at the other guy, and he kind of shrugged his shoulders, and they turned around, walked back to their car, and took off. But we kept going, and every 45 minutes to an hour they came by, and it get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was just, we had placed a wreath on almost every single grave in section 27, and finally ran out of wreaths. And we were picking up the cardboard boxes and putting them back in the truck. These same two guys came along, and they said, they got out, by then they knew who I was, they recognized me as being the leader of it, I suppose. And they said, this looks so good that we just, don't worry about it. We'll get them cleaned up when the time comes. We're going to leave them for a month or so. They'd already had plans on how long they were going to do it. And they said, we'll get them cleaned up.
Really good. So, Marl, you said the first year, so you think it was like 10 acres the first year of stones that you probably covered?
Yeah.
And you talked about the John Kennedy grave, and I know that sticks in your mind because when we were just there, a month ago, he pointed it out to me again. Over the years when you've been at Arlington, and when I've been with you at Arlington, there have been times when people would come up to us and with a lot of emotion, talk to us and thank us for, placing the wreaths and all that. And I wanted to tell me, first, is there an incident like that you remember more than others, of somebody that came up to you?
It happened many times for many years, and I don't know if there's really been one particular one that sticks out in my mind. It happens all the time. People are just is, thrilled that we're there doing what we do and remembering their loved ones. It's just, it's a great atmosphere, as you know, when we're there. And there's one more thing I want to tell you about Section 27 that I learned afterwards. That Section 27 actually has the burial of the very first person that was buried at Arlington. I think his name is William Chrisman. And I can take it to his grave too. Well, at the time, I didn't know that. When we were there the first time, it's just something we learned over the years of being there. And we actually, I think 3 or 4 years ago, when we were fortunate enough to actually place a wreath on every single marker at Arlington, that the last one we did was Mr. Chrisman, because he was the very first one to be buried there. And so it was really quite something.
Sorry, that makes me emotional. How did it make you feel that day? So I remember that, if you think back about it, that our family and the Wreaths Across America staff and our family surprised us by bringing the grandkids. So when we placed that wreath, and you've got to do at least part of your vision, which is to place a wreath for every veteran. When you did that with your grandchildren, there must have been a lot of emotion around that. That there you were with your grandchildren, but you also had at least made it to place a wreath on every grave marker at Arlington. So how did you feel about that?
Well, it really was a special occasion that was photographed and filmed and everything else. This is the picture of the kids and me at William Chrisman's grave. And Pam, my oldest daughter, had the cell phone case made, and I still have the same cell phone that holds that case, and I lug it around every day.
Something else that you said, and I think when you just said it, I kind of had to chuckle, but you said that the first year that you went, that you started reading the names out loud, and as you went, you actually started to have a good time. And I think that's something that we need to talk about a little bit, because I think that one of the things that is very special, not only for us, but for the Gold Star families and the relatives of people who have loved ones buried at these cemeteries, it's not something you would think of describing as a good time, but at the same time, it's not a burial, and it is, although it can be very beautiful and it is a time when people come together, and it's like a celebration of the lives of these people. And we talked about again to be their witness, and we've had the opportunity over the years to place wreaths that we've gone by graves together. And try to tell me about some of the graves that you placed a wreath on, and you either recognize their names, or it might have brought to you a memory of a battle or something, and then you actually, I know in years past you've said to me, imagine what his last thoughts were. This was somebody who died young in their life. So talk to me about somebody that you've had the honor to honor.
It's been so long. I mean, this fall it's going to make 27 years, consecutive years of being there. I've learned the cemetery, almost every avenue and every section over that length of time. But I mean, you can think of Audie Murphy and where he's buried. Joe Louis is another one. General Pershing, who has just an ordinary issued stone, just like hundreds of thousands of other ones. So there's literally, as you said before, and other people have said, every single stone is a story. So it's just an amazing place.
So the other thing that has happened over the years for us is we've talked about, and of course we do talk, about the journey of Wreaths Across America, from placing wreaths to remember to where we are now, where the mission is to remember, honor, and teach. So over the years, you've realized how important this is to those that serve and their families. And what do you think is the most important thing that Wreaths Across America needs to do going forward? Not talking about the placing of the wreaths, but where do you think what we do as an organization, with you as the founder, what do you think that whole piece plays in the future?
Well, I tell you, I think there's a mission that we all have, and in particular with me, I have a goal to place a wreath on every single veteran's grave, American hero's grave in the world. And we have just barely scratched the surface of that at this point. And by doing that, and we're talking, it's a major thing because by the time that happens, it's going to be at least 10 years from now, by the time we actually are successful in placing a wreath on every single American hero's grave. You're going to go from where we are today to actually it's like 15 times as many graves we're going to be doing to reach that goal of placing a wreath on every single American hero's grave. And by doing that, the biggest thing, the mission of Wreaths Across America is remember and honor and teach. And of course, the biggest thing everybody hands down knows is the teach portion. And you're going to, by placing a wreath on every single American hero's grave, you're going to touch every single family in the United States. And you're going to point out what the military, the veterans, have done for all of us, so that we can have what we have today and the freedom that we have to do what we can do or want to do in this country. And I think we have to be very respectful of those people. And I think that's what you're going to teach the kids, is to be, this country that we have is not what it is today without an unbelievable cost. And there's been almost 1 million people that gave the ultimate sacrifice. But the other, at this point, 24 million people didn't give the ultimate sacrifice. They were lucky enough to get back home. But they gave years of their lives so that we could have what we have.
This next segment of Mission Matters is called America's Mighty Warriors.
To be speaking with Debbie Lee. Debbie Lee founded America's Mighty Warriors. Debbie, welcome to Mission Matters.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on the show today.
Terrific. Now, let's just start really at the very beginning. Before we allow you to go in and talk about America's Mighty Warriors and the amazing things that are taking place as part of your mission, would you first tell us a little bit about Debbie Lee and, most importantly, about your son, Mark?
You bet. So I have been a single parent most of my life. I'm blessed to have 3 great kids, and Mark was the youngest of my 3 children. My oldest son, Christopher, served in the Marines. My son-in-law, Christopher, served in the Army. Mark was the first Navy SEAL that was killed in Iraq, and my brother served 33 years in the Air Force. So we're very proud of all of the branches of our military, and I'm very proud of all of my family members who chose to serve, and knowing that it could be required of them to give their life as my son did. And I've always been a patriot who understands the price that's paid for my freedom. I've always understood that our men and women serving in the military are the ones that carry that heavy burden, and their families. And so it was obvious after my son's death that in the midst of the grief and pain, I knew I wanted to do something else to help others going through that same pain. You can imagine as a parent to receive that knock on the door and to know that you're about to be informed that your loved one has died. It's the most devastating day that you could ever go through. And I've been a widow for 24 years, but the loss of my son is by far the toughest thing I've ever been through. And yet I'm so proud of Mark and the choice that he made to give his life to save his teammates, the choice that he made to give his life for the freedoms that we enjoy each and every day. How selfish would that be of me to say, I want all the freedoms that we have here in America, I want to enjoy them every single day, but why don't you send your kid to go pay that price? And so I'm proud of all of my son-in-laws and my brother who defended us, but I'm also proud of every man and woman who served, and so it's my honor to be able to continue to support our troops, to be able to support other Gold Star families who lost a loved one in combat. And there probably isn't anything that I wouldn't do for our troops. I used to be terrified to speak in front of people, and if anybody ever told me I'd be doing radio and TV interviews, I'd say, oh, no, you've got the wrong person. I don't do that. But there is no fear in that when I do that anymore, because I think of Mark and his final actions. He ran into the line of fire. He didn't run from it. He didn't duck below the wall and let his teammates take the casualties. He made the choice to give his life. And raising him as a single mom, how can I do anything different now than to be able to run into the line of fire for our troops and for their families? And I say that often, that I had no choice. The news that was given to me on the day that we were notified, August 2nd, 2006, that Mark had given his life. But I did have a choice, however, to put on his boots and pick up his weapon and stay in the fight. For our men and women who are struggling with PTS and TBI, stay in the fight for other Gold Star families who are trying to process through the grief of their loved one. And I'm not firing bullets at anybody. I don't even want to compare myself to being in combat, but it is a fight to make sure that they're taken care of.
Well, what a remarkable tribute to first your son Mark, and secondarily to those who serve. And you're clearly a remarkable woman, Debbie, because how do you overcome that grief, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and literally go out and, as you said, fight the fight for Mark and his comrades and those who serve. It really is a testimony to your strength and your sense of courage. Did you and Mark ever have these discussions prior to him going overseas, or as he was training to be a Navy SEAL?
I think we all knew that that was a possibility. On 9/11, all three of my children's lives were involved in the military. My son was in Okinawa as a Marine. My son-in-law, my daughter's husband, was serving in the Army. I think he was at Fort Knox at that time, maybe. He was still stateside, but he was one of the first that deployed over to Iraq. And Mark being, in training to be a Navy SEAL. And I knew that I would have a loved one in the combat zone. I knew I could see the handwriting on the wall. We knew that's where we were going as a nation. But I never thought about any of them losing their life for this country. I'm a believer. I knew they were in God's hands, whatever the outcome was, and I know worrying about that wouldn't change that any. And those are, tough discussions, to have. I do remember a brief conversation that Mark and I had in my home before he deployed, and just, kind of doing the things that they're required to do and make sure that the will's written out and, the details of that are taken care of. But it's an awkward conversation to have with your loved one when they're still alive. You don't want to go there. I think in the SEAL community, they almost believe that, somehow that's, a jinx that you put on yourself to do that. They are all required. I think most of them would not have, written the instructions for if something happens to me. Here's what I want to be buried in. Here's where I want to be buried. Here's what I want in this ceremony. Mark was very detailed, even down to some of the songs. I picked several songs from, We Were Soldiers that were played. But those things do help immensely in that process when you have been notified that your son or your loved one has been killed. You are in such an intense place of grief that you can't think. And so to have to not try to make some of those decisions in the midst of that grief is very helpful to be able to do that. And one of the final ones that he didn't decide on was where he wanted to be buried. And he had talked with his wife about, either I want to be buried up in my hometown where I grew up in Hood River, Oregon, or I want to be buried at Fort Rosecrans in San Diego. And where he grew up, it was a small town of 5,000 people. There was no national cemetery there. It was just a small town, cemetery.
And of course, now Fort Rosecrans is participating with Wreaths Across America as a participating cemetery and so forth. Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, Debbie, but did Mark's last letter home, I understand, he asked for a very specific request from you. Can you share that?
Yes, and that wasn't, actually, it was the last letter that we received from him. It wasn't that if you're reading this, I'm gone. but he talks about a lot of amazing things, and I would encourage your listeners to go to our website at americasmightywarriors.org and read that letter in its entirety. Mark was one of the main characters in the movie American Sniper, and they used that. That's supposed to be me reading part of his last letter home in his funeral scene, but it takes it out of context by just reading those first couple lines. And he ends that letter with, "To my family and friends, do me a favor. Pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life." And that's part of our mission with America's Mighty Warriors, is to do that in numerous different ways. He also talks about random acts of kindness. And when's the last time you paid for a stranger's cup of coffee or meal or tank of gas? And so for us, last year was the first year that we learned that the graves at Fort Rosecrans were not being sponsored, that there was just a few that, the money had been raised to be able to do that. And I said, well, we want to step in and change that. That's where Mark's buried. I don't want just his grave to have a wreath on there each year. I don't want just 500 of those graves to have it. I want to make sure all of those veterans who served know that at Christmas time, we remember them, and we're grateful for their time of service. We're grateful for the sacrifices that they made. And so that's why we selected Fort Rosecrans this year, and we're going to try to double our efforts. Last year we paid for 1,000 additional wreaths to be placed up there, and it was awesome to be part of that day and be there as we took them all out of the boxes, and be there for the ceremony that honored these fallen, and watch, different Boy Scouts and youth organizations come alongside. And the way that it's done is absolutely, I would encourage all of your listeners to try to be part of one of these ceremonies in the National Cemetery that's near you, because it is amazing and it is so deserving. Our veterans are given so much to be able to have this simple honor of laying a wreath on their grave at Christmas, to let them and their families know we remember.
And that's a beautiful segue, Debbie, into our Giving in July campaign for our Mission Matters listeners to understand that during the month of July, while we're celebrating our Giving in July campaign, it's really to cause or to bring attention to a new relationship with new organizations that are like-minded organizations that we're partnering with for the Giving in July campaign, because as Karen Worcester would tell you herself, as our executive director, it is during the holidays that our deployed servicemen and women miss home the most, and there are a lot of empty seats at family gatherings. So we are trying to embrace other like-minded organizations. In fact, we do so through sponsoring those veterans wreaths that you just mentioned, and America's Mighty Warriors is one of the 5 nonprofits that we're celebrating during the month of July. And what they are doing with Wreaths Across America is sponsoring veterans wreaths. And for that $15 sponsorship, not only do you get a Veterans Remembrance wreath, but $5 of that donation is going back to help America's Mighty Warriors and supporting their mission.
You're listening to Mission Matters on Wreaths Across America Radio.
Why don't you tell us, Debbie, a little bit about America's Mighty Warriors and how you got it all started?
You bet. Well, I got it started out of a personal need. When Mark died, there were no other Gold Star mothers that had lost their, son that were there to walk alongside me and encourage me and let me know those stages of grief that I was going through, that this was normal, that this was natural, that it was part of the process, that I wasn't losing my mind. And I've never been a person who's going to sit and feel sorry for myself that somebody's not there doing something for me. I couldn't do anything for myself. Me having a pity party and feeling sorry for myself wouldn't bring Mark back. It physically would make me sick, and nobody'd want to be around me. That's not how God wired me. So instead of sitting feeling sorry for myself, I said, okay, I can do something for somebody else. And unfortunately, about 7 weeks after Mark died, we lost another Navy SEAL that was on Mark's sister platoon, and that was Mike Monsoor, who fell on a grenade and was given the Medal of Honor. And I knew I needed to be there for that family. I'm still very early in my grieving process, but I knew I needed to be there. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just knew I wanted to be there for them. And that was the first family that we supported. We did not have a foundation back then. And then I would just happen to be in Washington, D.C. I live in Arizona, so you don't just happen to be in Washington, D.C. when another Navy SEAL would be flown in that was wounded. And one thing led to another, and it was very clear on my heart. I would send care packages to the troops. I actually have visited Iraq twice, spent one of the Christmases over there taking care packages and Christmas cards to our veterans, and was very passionate about our veterans. I had such a much deeper understanding what that sacrifice was like now. And I did that for about 2 years just on my own funds, and then finally knew that that was a direction that God was pointing me and that I couldn't do with what was left of my funds. And so I started America's Mighty Warriors. We added the, random acts of kindness was something I did even before we started the foundation. When Mark said, when's the last time you paid for a stranger's cup of coffee or meal or tank of gas? So when I was out and about, I would do that. And then ran into another gentleman who does thank you cards. And so I had these little cards like the size of a business card that every time I saw a veteran, I would go out of my way to go up and shake their hand and say thank you to them. The programs have developed into, we have a program called Helping Heroes Heal. And with that, our veterans who are struggling with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury, we're paying for hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatments, hormone and vitamin therapy, and then we pay travel costs to a program called Mighty Oaks. We're trying to do natural things that are restoring their health to them. I feel like so many of our veterans are going to the VA and they're coming out with gallon-sized baggies filled with prescription drugs that they're all supposed to take at the same time. And I just feel like the attitude, not all of them, but a lot of the VAs, it's the veterans go away, take these pills, don't bother us. And the side effects on 2/3 of those prescription drugs they're taking says may cause suicidal tendencies. Why would we be giving our veterans that are depressed drugs that may cause suicidal tendencies? So we're trying to do those natural things. With the hyperbaric oxygen therapy and traumatic brain injury, it's actually healing the brain. It's amazing to see the SPECT scans before and after. We have a house in Arizona called the Heroes Hope Home, where Gold Star families can come stay for the week, and we just love on them and pamper them and let them know we'll never forget your hero, and we won't ever forget you. And when they get here, they get gift baskets, and inside are chocolates and balloons and flowers and gifts, but there's gift cards for manicures, pedicures, massages, meals, sporting events. The entire time we just take care of them. We do retreats in Texas for our Gold Star families. We also do those for our Purple Heart recipients and for their immediate family. And we do a lot of advocacy and education. So if there's an injustice against the troops, we'll try to step in and make that right. When they're serving, they can't speak out. The UCMJ doesn't allow them to speak out on issues. But we can be that voice for them. We can change things for them. And it doesn't matter if it's corporation or our government, then we try to stand in and be an advocate for them. There probably isn't anything, I wouldn't do for our veterans. I mentioned the random acts of kindness that we do, and we start with those things Mark talked about, but we go up to a $5,000 grant. Typically, those are a little more crisis situation type things, but the veteran themselves can't come ask us. We unfortunately have found there's veterans that will go from charity to charity just trying to see what they can take and kind of have an entitled attitude, but the ones that really need the help usually won't come ask. And so if you knew somebody, you could reach out to us and say, hey, here's the circumstance. My buddy's house just burnt to the ground, or his daughter's dying of cancer, or, we have a veteran that needs hospice. And we'll step in and do up to a $5,000 grant. We just had a Gold Star stepsister that was down in Mexico, and you might have seen it. She was parasailing, and the cord came disconnected, and she's up supposed to be a 10-minute ride. She's up there for 45 minutes, not ever having parachuted in a storm, and finally is slammed to the ground, was in the hospital down there for almost a month and needed to get back home, but the hospital would not release her till she paid the bill in full, and the Flight for Life wouldn't flight her home. And so we stepped in and were able to help pay for that Flight for Life to get her back home. And her brother is buried up at Fort Rosecrans, and next time I'm there, I'll be placing flowers on his grave. And there isn't anything I wouldn't do.
That's very clear, Debbie. As a reminder to our audience, you are listening to Mission Matters, the voice of Wreaths Across America Radio. I am Susan Patton, standing in on this episode for Karen Worcester, our Executive Director for Wreaths Across America, and we are partnering and celebrating our Giving in July campaign. It may be a little known fact to a lot of folks that Wreaths Across America, over the last 10 years, in partnering with like-minded organizations, has been able to give back over $8 million to other nonprofits who are serving military and their families, and the service coming from America's Mighty Warriors is just sounds tremendous. Now, is there a specific geographical region that you serve? It sounds almost as though you're serving the entire country.
We are a nationwide organization. So we take care of our veterans no matter what state they're in. We take care of our Gold Star families no matter what state they're in. Our men and women who serve us, they give up their lives for us everywhere in America. So we are a national charity that reaches in all 50 states.
Now, Debbie, you certainly shared with us and our listeners why patriotism is so important and why supporting our military and so forth because of your personal experiences. What spoke to you about the Wreaths Across America mission and your desire to get involved to be sure that more of our local hometown heroes are remembered?
Well, I've been familiar with Wreaths Across America for many years, have friends who, have loved ones in Arlington, and that was their primary, where it started, where the mission started, and where their strongest impact is. But I had never actually, been to one when they do the ceremonies, and it's not just people just running from grave to grave putting a wreath there. I mean, there are ceremonies. They have speakers. They have an amazing way that they honor our veterans. And each time a wreath is placed, then those names are read on that grave and remembered. And I have another acquaintance who got involved with Wreaths Across America and knew that Mark was buried at Fort Rosecrans. And she was the one that educated me on how few graves were really being decorated with the wreaths up there at Christmas time. And I just knew that was something I wanted to present to my board, and that we wanted to make a big impact that way to be able to support what Wreaths Across America was doing up there and to be able to honor our veterans. And so we're excited to be back for the second year, and be able to do this with you guys. And I would just encourage your listeners to go to your web page there and click on America's Mighty Warriors and donate through our link and continue to support us and Wreaths Across America as we honor our veterans and remember our fallen.
Ask yourself, where would I be? What would my life be like were it not for our veterans who have stepped up for us all, time and time again, over the course of this nation's history? Hello, I'm Mauro Worcester. I'm the founder of Wreaths Across America. For more than 20 years, I've been asked countless times, what is a veteran's wreath? Why do I place wreaths on veteran graves? A veteran wreath is made up of 10 balsam bouquets. Each bouquet helps describe a veteran. The first bouquet stands for the veteran's faith in God. The second bouquet stands for the veteran's love for one another. The third bouquet stands for the veteran's strength, work ethic, and character. The fourth bouquet stands for the veteran's honesty and integrity. The fifth bouquet stands for the veteran's humility, selflessness, and modesty. The sixth bouquet stands for the veteran's ambitions and aspirations. The seventh bouquet stands for the veteran's optimism for their fellow Americans and for our country. The eighth bouquet stands for the veterans' concern for the future and future generations. The ninth bouquet stands for the veterans' pride in carrying out their duties. The 10th and final bouquet stands for the veterans' hopes and dreams that didn't always come true, but left them with no regrets. Now this wreath made of 10 bouquets becomes a symbol of honor, respect, and victory. It's made from evergreens, which symbolizes longevity and endurance. Its circular shape symbolizes eternity, as it has no beginning and no end. Its clean forest scent symbolizes purity and simplicity. Its red bow symbolizes great sacrifice. This year, when you place a wreath on a veteran's grave, you'll know it's not just a wreath. It's your personal gift to an American hero, and you will swell with pride, and there'll be a tear in your eye, knowing that you've done something very, very special. God bless our veterans, and God bless America. It's me anymore. It's many, many volunteers, trucking companies and individuals and companies all over the United States.
I don't want to let my brother's name be forgotten. And nobody should let anybody that's killed over here their name forgotten or forgot what they did.
Ultimately, it's all about saying thank you to everyone in here.
In life, they honored their country. In death, their country honors them.
People sacrifice their lives for our freedom, and I think that it's great for all of us to be involved with this, to give back a little bit.
My name is Catherine Cross, and I'm an American Gold Star mother. I lost my son in January of 2002. He was a Navy SEAL.
All right, we're laying wreaths because it's the holiday season, and the holiday season is a time of joy, gratitude, and giving more than you receive. Now, does all that fit in such a solemn moment as this? I think it does. In this time of year where traditions include exchanging gifts, I would ask all of you to consider this. The soldiers we honor today gave us gifts. The gift of an example of selflessness. They put themselves before others. They gave us the gift of safety and security. And the question is, what will we do with these gifts? Some of us, the currently serving, will look to their example and continue to fight for our safety and security and our personal freedom. But all of us should humbly take these gifts, their gifts, and leave here today recommitted to live a life worthy of their sacrifice, lest we forget.
You should also know that this nation is being served currently by another great generation of young men and women.
Still doing their job, protecting us, giving us our freedom. So even if it's a little cold, we'll be out here honoring the ones that have fallen. So it's nothing compared to what they do for us.
On occasions like this, when we stop to honor our veterans, living and dead, we tend to see them as square-jawed, tall, husky, Norman Rockwell type of people. And that's not what they are. These people that we're honoring today came from right here in our community. And if you want to see what they look like, just look around you. Look at your neighbors. Look at the veterans among you, and you'll see what veterans look like who have been there. Look at the youngsters that are with us, and you'll see what the veterans of tomorrow are going to look like. There are folks, when they leave to go to serve their country, there are no bands, there's no music, no flags. They simply go and do their duty. They leave their families, they leave their jobs, they leave their communities. They go out and they do a good job, and that's why we honor them today.
In this segment, I have the Executive Director, Karen Worcester, interviewing Lieutenant Colonel David Benhoff, retired, and he had a unique position. He was interviewing soldiers while over in Iraq, and he brings up the controversy of rules of engagement, which one of my prior podcasts, if you look back, is ROE. He says some controversial things. Yeah, listen up, hear this.
Opportunity to do all those interviews. There must be something in your long career that sticks out as a story that really affected your life and what you wanted to do when you got out. Is there something that, or a series of somethings that you talk about that pointed you in the direction that you now are in?
Well, yes, there is actually. I mean, in one of the things that really stood out in my recent deployments, the war on terror, is the very convoluted and conflicting rules of engagement that the Marines and others were given over there. And I saw it firsthand where, in fact, we did interviews of some Marines that were on a convoy from, I can't remember if it was coming out of or going into Fallujah. But anyway, long story short, they were attacked by a suicide-borne vehicle, and they were telling me afterward, and there were several folks killed and a lot of them burned, and they were very upset, telling me afterward that the last words from the gunner's mouth, who was up in the turret before he was killed, were, "Can I shoot?" Wow. And just the position we're putting these young folks in, where, I mean, they were court-martialing people, if they thought they didn't do right, and you're putting these young kids out there, giving them tremendous responsibility, and then they're second guessing whether they can protect themselves and their comrades. And I know that a lot of them are struggling with issues from did I make the right decision, that sort of thing. And we see that and with our Vietnam vets especially, well, all of them really that have seen combat. They just struggle with a lot of things that folks that don't experience that type of
it's so interesting that you say that. Even for me, as many people as I've talked to, it's almost like that puts a light bulb right over the top of PTSD. That if you have to, if you don't have clear, direction, then to come home and struggle if you did the right thing, and you wonder how different things would have been if World War II had embedded reporters and questions of, it's no wonder that these young people struggle, and you see so much of it. So that's so interesting.
Interesting you mentioned World War II, because I think of that often in that context, because, I mean, we've tried to make war clean, and it's never clean, and to expect it to be, and to expect the people that are involved in it to operate with no, mistakes and casualties that aren't combatants it's not going to happen, and it's an impossible position to put people into.
It is. We at Wreaths Across America, we always talk about, we never get into the, about the conflict, because that's certainly above my pay grade, most of us, but to talk about those people that go and serve, and to be away from your family and doing this job to protect and serve, and to then, I mean, that is such a graphic story. I thank you for sharing that. And yeah, gosh, you've got a lot of knowledge there, sir. I hope you're writing a book.
Well, I did a couple photo books, but I haven't written a book.
And right now, I'd like to end the podcast with Wreaths Across America's ceremonial script that I will be speaking for the Castleberry community at All Faiths Memorial Park on on 1390 Park Avenue in Castleberry, Florida, 32707, where Staff Sergeant Robert James Miller is laid to rest, who gave his life for our country on January 25th, 2008 in the Kunar province of Afghanistan. Please Google his name, Robert James Miller, and read his citation for the Medal of Honor. Amazing story, what he did for our country. Well, here it goes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in a moment of silence to remember the fallen, the prisoners of war, the missing in action, and honor those who have served and are serving this nation's armed services. Please stand while we post the colors. Color Guard, post the colors. We are gathered here today at this memorial site and memorial sites all across America to remember that we are one nation with one flag. We are all proud to be Americans that live in a free society made up of many people, many races, from many walks of life. The freedoms we enjoy today have not come without a price. Lying here before us and in cemeteries throughout this nation are men and women who gave their lives so that we can live in freedom and without fear. We can worship as we see fit. We can raise our children to believe as we do. We can travel from one end of this great nation to the other and not have to ask permission to go. We are free to vote for whomever we feel should be in government office, and we answer to no one but our own feelings. We have the right to succeed, and we have the right to fail at whatever endeavor we wish to pursue. The United States of America was founded on the ideals of freedom, justice, and equality. Our nation stands as a shining beacon of liberty and freedom to the world. We thank those who gave their lives to keep us free, and we shall never forget you. We shall remember. Today, many of you here are veterans of wars and conflicts that America has had to fight to protect the innocent and oppressed. America has always been the first nation to stand up for the freedom of people from around the world. Many of you here today have answered that call and served your country well. We are here to say thank you, and we are honored to know you. There are many men and women serving today in all the branches of the military, here at home and in places far away that most of us have never heard of. These men and women are part of the best trained, best equipped force in the world. We honor them and their families for the sacrifice they make each day to keep our country safe from terrorism, hatred, injustice that plague the world community. When you see a veteran or an active duty member of the armed forces, take a moment to say thank you. We owe them our way of life, and a moment of your time is well spent. Quoting of our 40th United States President, Ronald Reagan, quote, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same, or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men and women were free." End quote. Today we show a united front of national unity across the United States of America as we remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach our children the value of freedom. Wreath laying. Color Guard, and if present, Honor Guard will present arms at the laying of the wreath. Now we will lay a remembrance wreath in the memory of those who served and are serving in the United States Army. Now we will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of those who have served and are serving in the United States Marine Corps. Now we lay a remembrance of the wreath in memory of those who served and are serving in the United States Navy. Now we lay a remembrance wreath in memory of those who served and are serving in the United States Air Force. Now we lay a remembrance wreath in memory of those who served and are serving in the United States Coast Guard. As a community, we lay a remembrance wreath in honor of the 93,129 United States servicemen from all branches of the service, who last known status was either prisoners of war or missing in action. These individuals have never returned to their families and homes. We shall never forget you. Well, that ends this podcast. So this Saturday on the 15th at 12 o'clock noon, please Google wreathsacrossamerica.org and find a cemetery closest to you. And come on out and lay a wreath for the fallen. You'll be glad you did. Got to end this with sponsorships. And we see you next week on Remember the Fallen with Sergeant Dave.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network. Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all set to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Attention business owners and independent contractors. This is a money-saving message from Tax Mediation Services. If your business owes $20,000 or more in taxes, we can help you today, right now. Listen, dealing with the IRS is no picnic. It's an intimidating and extremely stressful process, and you don't want to go it alone. Our attorneys know every law, every tax break, and every possible opportunity to help you resolve and reduce your tax debt. And if you owe more than $20,000, you may be at the top of their hit list. So don't take your tax debt lightly, because it will not go away on its own. The IRS can seize your bank accounts, your home, and even shut down your business. Call our tax experts today at 1-800-783-0810 and let us deal with the IRS while you focus on your business. That's 1-800-783-0810. Again, that's 800-783-0810.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. you'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now, 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
Sometimes riders feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's file for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.